Rod Carley's new book, RUFF, is a wonderful, witty, funny, historical fiction. It takes us back to Elizabethan times, and William Shakespeare is at the center of the story. The book paints some brilliant pictures of the people and places of the times. And we say, welcome to Rod once again. Hi, Rod. How are you today?
Hey, Mike. It's great to be here as always.
Yeah, nice to see you too. Now, Rod, I'm quite interested to know what sparked your interest to write about Shakespeare at this time of his life.
Okay. Well, the idea originally came, Mike, from my second novel, Kinmount. And in that, I had a protagonist named Dave Middleton, who was a down-and-out stage director who found himself directing Romeo and Juliet in farm country in Kinmount, which is not too far from Halliburton, right? And there he encounters every obstacle possible, and he finds himself this reluctant emissary of truth in a battle between artistic integrity and censorship. And when I created the character, the last name, surname Middleton, I made him the fictitious descendant of a young Jacobean playwright named Thomas Middleton, who is writing at the same time as Shakespeare. Although when the book takes place, RUFF, Will Shakespeare is on the eve of his 40th birthday, and Thomas Middleton is 21. So he's a whole new generation of writers. And there is academic belief, research that's been done that suggests that Thomas Middleton might have written some of the witches' scenes in Macbeth. So it got me thinking, well, what would have been like? What would have brought these two writers together, they're generations apart, to write this Scottish supernatural thriller? And especially if they're enemies. If this young Middleton views Shakespeare as yesterday's news, kind of like Johnny Rotten, probably looking at Paul McCartney, right, in the late 1970s, the Beatles, right? And so you've got this young, up-and-coming punk poet who thinks that what Shakespeare writes about, these silly history plays with actors coming out with toy swords and all these nonsensical comedies where all these couples get married at the end, he sees that having no bearing on the world he's living in. He wants to write about the real streets of London, about slum landlords, about the sick and the homeless and housing, and write about the real women of London and have real women play them, diametrically opposed to what Shakespeare's writing. And so at the time of the book, Shakespeare is, he is the big name of London. But when we meet him in the book, he's going through a midlife crisis. So I thought it would be great fun to put these two energies together and find a way that would force them to come together to have to write Macbeth. So that was the catalyst for the idea. And then I've just evolved it from there to become the novel that it is.
Well, you talk about these two generations, and one of the interesting parts about the book, and it catches you the first time it happens. It catches you right away. The book deliberately creates connections to our society today. What was the impetus for that?
Well, two minds. First off, Mike, I've directed a lot of Shakespeare as well in the world of theater, and I think any productions of Shakespeare shouldn't be a dusty old museum piece. They've got to be fresh and accessible to today's audience. The same way, if one's going to write a book about William Shakespeare, a piece of fiction, well, it better be fresh. There's something new to say, and otherwise it serves no purpose. One of my great quotes is by Mark Twain when he says, "History doesn't repeat itself, but it often rhymes." So I consciously wanted to write this book, although it is set in 1604, and make it feel like it's today and draw the parallels. And for example, Shakespeare was dealing with a plague, and we dealt with the pandemic. And you might remember when the first lockdown happened in March 2020, and no one knows what's really going on, and if there'll be a vaccine. So people start making sourdough bread and whatever. And there was a meme going around that said, well, when Shakespeare was in quarantine during the Great Plague, he wrote his masterpiece, King Lear. What are you doing? So that struck me, I struck that chord. And a lot of our pandemic protocols were mirrored in Shakespeare's day with plague protocols. So I found those connections quite fascinating. Likewise, Politically, Shakespeare was dealing with the ultra-conservative, the right-wing conservative Puritans, right? And they now had a majority in Parliament, and no one thought that was possible. It was the same way that no one ever thought that Trump would beat Hillary Clinton or that we'd have him coming into office again, right? No one thought that would happen. So it's a scary time because the Puritans, they believed that the cause of the plague was sin, and the cause of sin was the theater. So therefore, the cause of the plague was the theater, which makes a lot of sense, right? And it sounds like a lot of arguments coming from south of the border. So that struck me. And the topic of climate change, whereas we deal with global warming and everything's heating up, in Shakespeare's day, they dealt with something called the Little Ice Age, where all the temperatures were plummeting and it destroyed crops and it caused civil unrest. And if you ask the average Londoner on the street, so what's the cause of climate change? And they would say, Scottish witches. So fake news was alive and well in Shakespeare's day, the way it is in our world, certainly. And in the book, I give Shakespeare a three-legged beagle named Biscuit. I figured Shakespeare would have a dog. And I'm pretty sure that Biscuit got more accurate news sniffing another dog's butt than the average Londoner did listening to the news in the street. And again, nothing much has changed when we see the world of fake news and AI that we're dealing with. And you add in, right, the equality and equity for women, women's rights, the tread, the boards, gender equality, the xenophobia at the time, and what's happening now again south of the border. And the modern resonances were quite striking. So my goal then was to try to write a book that, although it's set 1604, feels more modern than tomorrow.
It really is a marvelous feast that you've presented to everybody, covering this waterfront of topics. And as you've just pointed out, you make it connect to our lives today. But it is a wonderfully funny and witty book. And I think I've said it to a number of people that one of the things that I just delighted in was your mastery of the English language, and you paint such great pictures. And I know that the critics have been very, very kind to you. You must be very happy with the response you're getting to the book.
I am, Mike. Once you put a book out into the marketplace, it's no longer yours, it's the readers. And I have been heartened by the response that I've gotten on tour, talking to readers, meeting new readers, and that the book is landing and that it has resonance. And because, it celebrates wordplay, right? And there's a lot of puns. And writing humor, being a humor writer, it's very subjective, right? What makes me laugh may not make you laugh. So, when you're writing, all you can really do is write for yourself, write for what you find is funny, and just trust that your readers are going to see it the same way that you do.
And all the people that you've talked to in radio, newspapers, podcasts, you've had a wonderful coverage of the book and your work. Has this been expected, or is this something new for you, this awareness of your works?
I would say RUFF has taken my writing to the next level in terms of public awareness. I am grateful to the Ontario Arts Council and the Canada Council, who both provided me with travel grant to help facilitate this tour that I did. The Canada Council made it possible for me to go to British Columbia and Alberta, and the Ontario Arts Council made it possible for me to tour all through Northern Ontario. And that touring and planning that tour, I began working on that about eight or 9 months before the book came out. So there was a lot of legwork that went into organizing the tour, a lot of logistics to make it happen. And so I'm pleased that I can say that, to me, the tour was a success. The goal was to meet new readers, new booksellers, and of course other authors along my way. And a lot of those writers were joining in as guest moderators and such, right? So it's been a really rich experience. And and I'm gratified that RUFF is finding its readership, and that it has caught on, and more people are now more aware of me and my writing.
Well, you were very kind enough to share this tour with us on Facebook, and you met so many people. I know throughout your writing career that you've always been very supportive of local booksellers, and I think they must be pleased with the opportunity to host you as well.
I think so, yeah. And you're great, Mike. And I've always been, I'm a great, uh, yes, I celebrate the indie bookshops. They're the heart and soul of communities, and they care. Amazon can ship you something very quickly and it'll arrive in a box, but it doesn't have the heart and soul of what the independent booksellers are doing, or how they're recommending books, and we need to keep them alive in the community. So I made it a real point on my book tour to primarily go to the independent booksellers. And I had to do a few Indigo events and whatnot. Not knocking Indigos, they serve their purpose, but the independents are where the heart and soul really lives.
Well, Rod, congratulations on yet another great release. And of course, our best wishes for continued success with RUFF. This is a perfect time of year for people to be thinking about RUFF as a gift, either for themselves for winter reading or for someone else. This is a good time to get into your local bookseller, wouldn't you say?
I would agree. And I want to say one thing too, Mike, even though we've got a postal strike going on, those booksellers can get RUFF into their stores because they're not using Canada Post. So you can you can go in and if they don't have it in stock, they can order a copy in very quickly for you as well.
Rod, thanks for joining us today. Good to chat with you again.
Oh, you too, Mike. It always is.
Rod Carley has been our guest today. He's an award-winning Canadian author, and his latest book is called RUFF. It's a wonderfully entertaining and worthwhile read. So please do contact your local bookseller and make it yours, or make it for someone you care about.